So let's start this lecture with production linked incentive scheme for food processing industries. Why news? Because cabinet has approved what this central sector scheme. Now central sector scheme means all the burden is being bore by the central government. Okay, production linked incentive scheme. It seeks to, what the aim of the scheme is, it seeks to create global manufacturing champions of the sector of what? Food processing industries. And so that India's food products can be made competitive on the international scale as well as in the domestic market. Because the kind of economy that we are having right now, the kind of economic transition that we are going through, there will be a higher demand for packaged foods and processed foods. Okay, to meet that demand, either we will have to import that or we'll have to domestically manufacture. So we have a very prime opportunity at this moment of point, that our food processing sector, in the sense that our demand for packaged and processed food is growing, our demand for healthy diet is growing. So to fulfill that demand, okay, the government is trying to trying to improve the food production sector and food processing sector in the country. Although we are one of the highest producers of food grains in the world, but still the production and the processing both are very different, in the sense that we lag very behind in the ranking of food processing sector vis-a-vis other countries. Okay? To support Indian brands, it has two prime aims. The first one is to increase manufacturing or to increase the food processing sector, that is on the industrial scale. Okay, the intervention in the industrial processing sector, the first one. And the second one is promotion of the brands. Okay, formation of global brands. Like one of the very important global brand in the food processing sector is not global, domestic brand is Amul, and the other is Mother Dairy. These are two dairy processing sector industries. Okay, so they have now become a brand, and they have a brand value due to which they have got a recognition throughout the world and throughout the India also. And now government wants to create a similar brand value of food processing sector of India, the processed food that is being produced in India. Okay, so now what is the current status of food processing sector in India? This one is evolution of global food demand. Kindly pay attention to this one. Indicators along this line and along this line we have indicators, and this shows the demand, the kind of demand these indicators represent. The first one is surviving and carbohydrate staples. That is those countries which are least developed or poor. The basic demand of food in those countries is about surviving, and that demand arises from the energy demand, the kind of energy requirement that population has. The food demand arises from the kind of energy demand that the population has. And the basic energy demand is fulfilled by carbohydrate staples like potato. Now sub-Saharan Africa and other African countries and the least developed countries are in this category. India, China and Latin America have now evolved a mass market for food industry, where dairy, meat, fresh fruit, fruit juices, beverages. Our mass demand for the processed food arises from dairy, meat, okay, and beverages, processed beverages and all these things. Now you can see USA, Japan and Western Australia, of course Western Australia and Western Europe countries, the most developed countries that we see, their demand is about diet functional and organic foods. The demand for organic foods and diet functional. Diet functional in the sense, what kind of diet they are going to, they are nutrition conscious. The people are getting nutrition conscious, and their other indicator is high technology. That means the food processing sector is very high tech and is catering to the demand of a very specific and very diet functional and organic kind of foods. Okay. The second is share of manufacturing of processed food in the manufacturing GVA. as well as the total GVA. What is GVA? GVA is gross value added या gross value addition. Gross value addition means आप कोई एक basic product लीजिए and you are going to make some changes in that product. When the product finishes that process, its value gets changed. The amount of value addition that you have done is called gross value addition. ठीक है, तो gross value addition is a method of calculating GDP. But gross value addition is a better method of calculating the amount of intermediate value addition that are being done in the processing of a commodity. Now, in India, for 2017, the total gross value addition, food sector contributed to 1.7% of the total gross value addition in the country. That is very low. Now we will see, as compared to other countries like New Zealand, it has 4.6% and Indonesia has 7.5% of the total GVA. The food sector contributes to 7.5% of the total GVA addition or gross value addition of Indonesia. Whereas for manufacturing, it is 35.5%. Almost more than 1/3 of the gross value addition in manufacturing sector is going to what? Food processing sector in Indonesia. Indonesia is a relatively smaller country and it is also resource deficient. So it is trying to make money from the existing relative advantages or relative comparative advantages, rather we say. Relative comparative advantages in the sense, what is a relative comparative advantage? Relative comparative advantage is if a country A is having better technology, better resources for production of one good as compared to country B, then A is having a comparative advantage over country B in the production of that particular good. But country A might not have the similar kind of comparative advantage with respect to other goods. Country B might have the comparative advantage with respect to other goods. Similarly, that means Indonesia, New Zealand, these countries are having a higher percentage of food processing as their manufacturing GVA. Okay, that is, they are not relying upon heavy industries like steel, manufacturing of car for their manufacturing sector, but they are relying heavily upon what? Manufacturing of processed food beverages. That is, food sector पे बहुत ज़्यादा dependent है Indonesia, New Zealand, Australia, ये सारे countries as compared to heavy industries. Okay, so that means food sector, India is having a very low proportion of what? Food processing sector as a percentage of manufacturing GVA, and that is around 9.7%. It is very low. When we have very low proportion or contribution to the total GVA, then what can we do? We are having a higher opportunity, because these countries are now around saturation of their maximum capabilities, because they are operating around 30 to 35%. Sorry, they are operating around 30 to 35%. That means they have already achieved their peaking. Okay, so they are not going to their marginal benefits in investing these sectors are not going to be very high. Whereas for India, okay, I'm going to tell you one very important thing. It's a graph, it's a curve. It is going to be very helpful whenever you are trying to make analysis of marginal gains. Okay, this is called Preston Curve. Okay, so if a country is at this point and if a country is at this point, okay, so the marginal change, and this represents input, this represents output. Now you can see that if a marginal change in the input of A, let's say it A, let's say it B, if there is a very marginal change in input of A, if there is a very marginal change in the input of A, the corresponding change in output of A is higher. This is what I'm trying to demonstrate. That is, if there's a very small change in input of A, the change in output of A is very high as compared to B. If there is a very large change in input of B, still there is not going to be very huge change in output of B. Okay. That is, the countries which are trying to catch up have a higher marginal productivity. Okay, that is, if we are going to invest in this sector, then the output or the corresponding marginal gains in this sector are going to be high, and we are around 9.7%. We are way below. If this is 100%, okay, so we are way below. So we are having a very huge opportunity of earning higher gains in the terms of both output and what employment generation. So now this scheme also seeks to, now the very important thing is that in India, agricultural linkages are not very well established, in the sense that these linkages are called backward linkages and these linkages are called forward linkages. This is agricultural industry. Despite the fact that we are one of the highest producers of food and food grains in the whole world, the linkages are not very strong, and the poor linkages lead to huge loss and leakages. Okay, backward linkages in the sense of supplies, forward linkages in the sense of marketing and sales. This is our export, this represents export, this is household consumption and value addition industry. Fine. So forward linkages, and there exists a deficit of forward linkages as well as backward linkages. Backward linkages में क्या है? Basic inputs like tractor and utilities like power and water, and farm labor. So backward linkages as well as forward linkages are not very well established. The government has tried to rectify this and to address this through many schemes in the last 5 to 10 years. For example, in 2014, Agri-cluster scheme was brought. In 2014, Agri-cluster scheme, this scheme sought to form clusters for common food processing sectors. That is, how the clusters are to be formed. For example, this is a production area, okay, one common warehouse. This whole production area can be considered one cluster. A common warehouse, common processing facility can be provided. Okay, this helps in utilization of economy of a scale, in the sense that when a cluster is formed, a common facilities can be made available for different industries. Okay, these common facilities can be used by all. For example, testing and grading facilities, warehousing facilities, transportation facilities. Okay, these can be used by all of the industries. That seeks to promote investment in that sector. ठीक है, तो 2014 में जो एग्रीकल्चर क्लस्टर सेक्टर स्कीम जो आई, उसका मेन मोटिव यही था कि एग्रीकल्चर क्लस्टर बनाने थे और वहां पे कॉमन फैसिलिटीज का प्रोविजन करना था जो कि बाकी सारी इंडस्ट्रीज यूज कर सकती हैं. ओके, उसके बाद आई संपदा स्कीम. संपदा स्कीम को अभी हम देखेंगे. संपदा स्कीम वाज बेसिकली एमलगमेशन ऑफ 7 एग्जिस्टिंग स्कीम्स. जो 7 एग्जिस्टिंग स्कीम थी उनको एक में लाके संपदा स्कीम के फॉर्म में ले आया. It was again launched by Ministry of Agriculture. One nation, one food law. One nation, one food law. This was launched by FSSAI so that a uniform standards of food laws can be brought in. ठीक है. And now 2021 में PLI for food processing sector, production linked incentive scheme for food processing sector. Okay, this is the evolution of how the government has been trying to address the deficits and how the government has been trying to utilize the existing infrastructure and develop the infrastructure for food processing sector. Now Sampada scheme, as I told, was amalgamation of 7 existing schemes. The first one is mega food parks. Mega food parks matlab setting up of huge food parks. Integrated cold chain and value addition infrastructure. Sorry, integrated cold chain and value addition. That is one integrated, the reefers, that is the cold storages and the cold storage vehicles, The whole logistical system should be integrated. Creation and expansion of food processing, the expansion of capacity of existing food processing industries. Infrastructure for agro-processing clusters. Now again, infrastructure development, for example, warehousing development for existing clusters of agro-processing sectors. Creation of backward and forward linkages, the one we saw recently. Food safety and quality assurance, testing and quality assurance, and human resource and institution. This is about training and development of human personnel in the sector of food processing sector. This was Sampada scheme launched in 2018. Okay. Now production link, what is production linked incentive scheme? In one of our earlier lecture also we saw what is production linked incentive scheme. Production linked incentive, as the name itself tells, is about providing incentives depending upon the production value or production volume. For example, in electronics manufacturing sector also the government has provided for production linked incentive schemes. For example, if a company is manufacturing 4,000 to 10,000 mobile phones in India, then they will be getting incentive on per phone per unit around 500 rupees. For example, this is a production link. This is the idea of production linked incentive scheme, incentivizing the manufacturing. That is the whole concept of production linked incentive scheme. Now, what are the objectives? The first one is expansion of processing capacity and branding abroad. As I told in the very beginning, it has two basic objectives. The first one is expansion of the existing manufacturing capacity, या production and processing capacity of the food processing sector. जैसे अगर टोमेटो से केचप बनाने वाली कंपनीज हैं तो उनकी प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी को इंक्रीज करना. ओके. And if the government is trying to incentivize its production, then it means that government is trying to help people build up industries in this sector. Okay. Capacity and branding abroad to incentivize emergence of strong Indian brands. Strong Indian brands को promote करना और उनको incentivize करना by for example Ashok Masale or MDH Masale is one of the champions in this whole processing sector. If they are participating in this PLI scheme, so their products will be displayed in the foreign markets, in the shelves of foreign markets, and government will incentivize, government will provide some kind of financial help in obtaining, in achieving that. Okay. So it has two basic aims. The first one is increasing the processing and manufacturing capacity. The second one is promotion of brands and creation of brand value. Okay. Second one is creation of global food manufacturing champions. Global food manufacturing champions in the sense कि, for example, Heinz is one of the global food champions, Coca-Cola is one of the global food champions. तो ऐसे brands इंडिया में बने उसके लिए ensure करना, ठीक है. Ensuring remunerative price, of course, ensuring remunerative price to farmers for their produce. And the last one is increasing employment. Almost all of the development schemes are having what? A component of employment generation. Okay. So these are the main objectives of this scheme. We are going to see how this scheme is going to be implemented. The budgetary outlay for the scheme is around 10,900 crore rupees. It is for the period of 6 years from 2021 to 2026-27. Okay. As I told, it has two components. The first one is manufacturing. Now manufacturing has, for the initial stages, the government has chosen four important things for manufacturing. The first one is ready to cook, ready to eat, like frozen meat. Okay. Foods, processed fruits. Okay. Processed fruits, marine products, fishes, salmon fish, for example, mozzarella cheese. These four have been chosen for the initial stages. Okay. And more industries will be included, more sectors will be included in this scheme on a later point of time. Now, innovative organic products. Now we can see that the market and demand of organic product is growing with a very fast rate. Okay. Or in Western countries, there is a huge demand that can be that can be met with Indian import. So now the government is also trying to incentivize not only the expansion of manufacturing capacity of existing food processing sectors, or not only incentivizing the manufacturing or setting up of manufacturing centers for food processing sector, but also it is trying to incentivize the organic foods, so that the demand for organic foods in the western countries and in this urban centers of India also can be met, and there is a very huge opportunity for farmers to get very remunerative price. This all comes under the umbrella scheme of doubling farmers income. ठीक है, तो these two have been chosen for the time being. About branding and promotion, as I told, the government will secure for the companies, or the government will help those companies financially in brand promotion out of the country. Okay, so that the global brands in the food processing sector can be developed. Now implementation of the scheme, the implementation will be isse pehle we'll see this. The scheme is fund limited. It is fund limited. That is, the budgetary outlay has been set to around 10,900 crore rupees, and it is fund limited. That is, it does not incentivize an elastic value of production, but the incentive will be limited in the sense that ऐसा नहीं है कि आप 1000 metric ton प्रोड्यूस करने लगेंगे तो आपको बहुत ज़्यादा मिल जाएगा as compared to like 100 metric ton. There will be a pre-settled agreement between the government and the industry, जिस पे पहले ही डिसाइड हो जाएगा कि आपको कितने पे और कितना इंसेंटिव मिलेगा और कितने तक का इंसेंटिव मिलेगा. That is, there is an upper limit to the amount of incentive what one can get. Okay, it would facilitate expansion. Very important thing is 10,900 crore rupees का investment है, and it will facilitate the expansion of existing industries to the tune of 33,494 crore rupees. That is, investment of 10,900 crore rupees, around 11,000 crore rupees, will lead to the growth of money or the value up to the tune of 33,500 crore rupees. Very important, another very important point is creation of employment. It will create nearly 2.5 lakh person, it will create employment for nearly 2.5 lakh people. Okay, now this is going to be very game changing in the sense that the existing pandemic and prior to the pandemic as well, the employment rate in India has been very low. Hence, to address that, the scheme is going to be very helpful. That we'll see. Now, implementation of the scheme will be monitored by. Okay, there are two important things. The first one is monitoring, and the second one is evaluation. It will be monitored by an empowered group of secretaries. Okay, the secretaries are basically IAS, higher ranking IAS officers. It will be monitored by a group of secretaries, the group is to be headed by the cabinet secretary. Okay, the cabinet secretary is the highest IAS officer in the country. The Ministry of Food Processing Industries is the nodal ministry for the implementation. And the second part, the first one is monitoring, and the second part is going to be evaluation. So to avoid any kind of corruption, the monitoring and evaluation have been separated. Moreover, the evaluation has been kept under the third party's evaluation. That is an outside body, that might be a private body or Quality Council of India, for example, or that has not yet been decided. The guidelines of the scheme are yet being prepared. But the monitoring will be monitoring will be done by the government secretaries only, but the evaluation of the implementation of the scheme will be done by a third party. Okay, and the ministry will prepare an annual action plan. Annual action plan मिनिस्ट्री प्रिपेयर करेगी, जिसमें कि एनुअल एक्शन के लिए और एनुअल टारगेट्स अचीव करने के लिए डिटेल्ड आउटलाइंस होंगे. दैट इज द स्कीम इज गोइंग टू बी वेरी टाइटली इंप्लीमेंटेड इन द सेंस कि मॉनिटरिंग, एक्शन प्लान और इवैल्यूएशन तीनों ही बहुत स्ट्रिक्ट एंड फर्म है. Okay. A special purpose vehicle. A special purpose vehicle is nothing but a special agency set up by government for implementation of some scheme that the government seeks to bring. Okay. तो in terms से आपको confuse नहीं होना है बिल्कुल भी. You have to be very clear about all these things. Economics में very important यही है कि आप सारी terms की definitions को बहुत अच्छे से याद कर लें. So the scheme is going to be implemented by project management agency. Okay, it will be a special purpose vehicle that will be specially formed for implementation of this scheme. It will be this special purpose vehicle will be formed within the Ministry of Food Processing Industries, and it's the sole responsibility of this agency will be implementation of the scheme by setting up a portal for inviting applications, scrutiny of application for the scheme. Okay, now and then uske baad claims ka disbursement of the incentive. तो मोस्टली दैट मीन्स मिनिस्ट्री के अंदर ही, फूड प्रोसेसिंग मिनिस्ट्री के अंदर ही ये एक स्पेशल पर्पस व्हीकल या इंप्लीमेंटिंग एजेंसी बनाई जाएगी. इस एजेंसी का काम होगा सारी एप्लीकेशंस को स्क्रूटिनाइज करना और इंसेंटिव्स का डिसबर्समेंट. और इंसेंटिव पेमेंट इज गोइंग टू बी फॉर द नेक्स्ट ईयर, लाइक फॉर 2021 द इंसेंटिव पेमेंट विल बी डन इन 2022. So that sums up the scheme, and this is a very important scheme from prelims point of view.